Hey girl, do you wish you could make your healthy habits stick, but life keeps getting in the way? Are you tired of diet culture telling you to shrink yourself when you'd rather just find true food freedom, move your body for joy, and feel and look good in your favorite leggings? Then you're in the right place. Think of this as Atomic Habits for Women. Hey, I'm Emily Nichols, habit and fitness coach, millennial mom, and Taco Tuesday enthusiast. I'm here to tell you there is an easier way than what we've been taught about health and our habits. How do I know? Because I've gone from former chronic dieter to habit hacker through the power of the system that I'm now going to teach you so you can finally stop dieting and just train for life via your habits. Remember, it's not your fault your healthy habits haven't stuck. We just have to do them differently. Are you ready to habit hack your health? Then let's do this. You're listening to episode 267 of Habit Hack Your Health. Hey girl, welcome back to the show. It's a new month and that might mean new goals for you. And I'm so excited about everyone that has joined me in the 21-day challenge as we're launching the Training for Life app. I'll share more info in the upcoming weeks about how you can become a member and gain access to my signature 12-week progressive overload program to help you reach your goals via this habit-based fitness program. It's unlike any other. So stay tuned. So, in all of my years of coaching group fitness and being a personal trainer, there will be some type of plyometric movement like a jump squat or jumping jacks or even just squatting down. And there is always a female client who will laugh and say they can't do it because they're gonna pee their pants. Or they say something along the lines of, good thing I'm wearing black leggings today. I have friends as well who can't even sneeze without peeing their pants. Now, I personally don't have that issue. After having 2 C-sections, I do have like some numbness still around my C-section scar, like 12 years later. And I have like that random shelf as well. No matter what I do, I can't get rid of it. But that's not what we're talking about today. But I have seen countless women over the years with this issue. And you're probably like me where you just thought this was something common that happens to women after having babies. But you'll learn today that although it is common, it's not normal. Now, this is a topic I've been wanting to chat about more with an expert, and today I'm so excited to share this conversation with you about pelvic floor. All about your pelvic floor with expert Dr. Desiree Cassell. So what is your pelvic floor? What is the pelvic floor? The pelvic floor muscles span like the bottom of your pelvis and it holds everything up. It supports your pelvic organs. So like your bladder, your bowels, your uterus or womb if you are a female. Your pelvic floor muscles help stabilize your core while assisting in essential bodily functions like pooping, peeing, and even having sex. But as you'll find out in this conversation today, it's more than just what you normally think of when it comes to your pelvic floor and that you just pee your pants because you have a weak pelvic floor, because thanks a lot, kids, right? We also are going to discuss how any aches and pains from the top of your head all the way down to your toes could actually be due to a weak pelvic floor. Now, your body is one big kinetic chain, and if something is off, it can throw other things off. I see it happen all the time as a coach. Now, I think this conversation is also interesting in noting that the connection of stress and tension we hold in our bodies due to our crazy, stressful lives, that can actually impact your pelvic floor. Oh my gosh, I learned so much in this conversation with our guests, and I know you're going to as well, and hopefully get some help if you need some pelvic floor PT. So let me tell you a little bit about Desiree. So Dr. Desiree Cassell is a doctor of physical therapy specializing in women's/pelvic health. She's the host of the Balanced Momtality podcast and owner and PT at the Balanced Momtality Women's Health and Wellness, where she coaches women in person in her home state of New Mexico, as well as virtually all over the world. She's a foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and she is a mama to very active kids ages 12, 6, and 3. I love Desiree's story. She's going to share more with you in this conversation too. But pretty much after her first pregnancy, she suffered with her own pelvic floor dysfunction. And like so many, she just accepted it as part of motherhood, right? Sadly, that meant no more jumping on trampolines and crossing her legs fiercely every time she sneezed or laughed so she wouldn't be herself. After PT school, she got pregnant with her second and was determined to put her knowledge to the test and was able to completely resolve her issues even while she was pregnant. This is so cool. So, leading to her passion in educating, empowering, and supporting other women through their lifespan that you don't have to accept these common issues as part of life. Right? Desiree uses a holistic, whole body approach to helping women heal their bodies and stay balanced throughout all stages of life, starting at the core. I could geek out talking to Desiree all day, you guys. This was such a interesting conversation and enlightening conversation, which if you are listening and you're like, yeah, that's me. I have to cross my legs so I don't pee my pants when I sneeze. You're like, girl, this is going to be a game changer for you. So get your pen and paper handy. Make sure to stick around till the end of our conversation because I'll share my top takeaways with you, okay? Get ready to stop peeing your pants. Let's go chat with Dr. Desiree. All right, girlies, I am so excited to be back with you today chatting with Desiree Cassell of the Balanced Momtality podcast. Desiree, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Same. I can't wait to dig into all things pelvic floor. Oh my gosh, our ladies are so excited to hear from you. But the first question I ask every guest is, what is your favorite habit hack? What is saving your life right now?
So, and I know we just chatted a little bit about some habit hacks on my show. And so one of the ones, and I didn't mention this one, but it's been one of the ones that has become a recurring theme that one for me has been a lifesaver for a few years, but for my patients has been something I've been bringing up to them really recently. So I'll use that one. And that is taking a loop band, or you don't even need any equipment, honestly, but doing exercises while you're already in the kitchen. So you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you're doing dishes. And so I have a lot of moms that, specifically will talk about, getting on and off the floor can even be a barrier, feeling like you have to put the mat out and have the space and make the time. And so even just like doing squats while you're doing dishes, and it can, yes, you look silly. My husband will walk by and be like, what are you doing? Because I'm doing squats. I'll have a, little loop band around above my knees on my thighs, and I'll be crab walking around the kitchen sideways while I'm putting dishes away. Okay. And I'll do calf raises at the sink. So I think just taking advantage of things you're already doing like that and adding some exercise in the kitchen is one of my favorite ones, and the bathroom, which we chatted about the bathroom on my show. So just getting in a lot of those, the places we're already living a lot in our world, and just sneaking in some exercise and activity can be such a huge help, because anything is better than nothing. So I would say that that's probably been my big habit hack lately.
You've been listening to my show because you and I speak the same language. We're like, you're either in the bathroom or the kitchen or a lot, and anything's better than nothing, girl. Like, we got to do what we got to do. That's Atomic Habits for Women at Play. I love it so much. Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What has led to you being who you are and what you do today?
Yeah. So, oh man, it's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. I really, I had issues ever since I got pregnant really young. I was 20 when I had my first baby, and I'm the oldest of 7. And so I remember this time when my daughter was probably like 2 or 3, and she was jumping on the trampoline at my parents' house. And she was like, Mom, come jump with me. And I was like, No, we're just not gonna do that right now. And I was like, offside talking to my mom, like, yeah, I pee myself now, so I can't get on the trampoline. And my mom was just so blatantly like, yep, welcome to motherhood. Like, that's why I haven't jumped on the trampoline with you guys in so long. And it was just kind of like accepted, like, oh, okay, yep, I guess this is life. This is how it is now. And so I just accepted it. And then going through PT school, we have a section learning about pelvic floor and gender health and all that kind of stuff. And even going through that course, actually going through that course, I was like, who would want to do this part of PT? Like, that does not sound very fun. But my third year in PT school, I got pregnant again. And I was like, you know what? I am sick of peeing myself. I don't want to have, and I also was having like some like sciatica symptoms and other things that we just kind of accept, especially during pregnancy. And so I was just kind of fed up with it. And I was like, you know what? I don't want my leaking to get worse. I got told I had prolapse. I didn't really have much symptoms with prolapse, but I didn't want that to get worse either. And so I really just was like, you know what? I'm going to put this to the test on my own body and just work on healing myself. And so I did, and I was able to get rid of all of my leaking and my pain while I was pregnant with my second baby. And that was kind of the big like, whoa, like this is not only something that can keep things from getting worse, but can actually, heal it. And even during pregnancy, which I just thought was so powerful and just such a like, every woman, every mom like needs to know about this. How is it that I'm seven at that point? It was like 6 years postpartum and just finding out that pelvic floor PT was even a thing. I didn't even know the pelvic floor was a thing. I didn't even know it was a muscle until I went into PT school, right? I had anatomy class in high school, anatomy in college. They didn't even teach me the pelvic floor was a muscle group there. And so I feel like there's just such a disservice. And I think that was really what kind of started that ignition and fire in me, just kind of knowing what I know. And it just felt like such a responsibility at that point to spread that knowledge and help other women. And so I've since, I do a very, orthopedic, full body pelvic floor approach with everything. Cause at this point, I can't see it separate. It's all connected. And unfortunately, even within the physical therapy world, that's still something you might find, right? You go to see a PT for your back and they're not talking about your pelvic floor. Or you might go see a pelvic floor PT and they're not talking about your neck pain or your foot pain. And so for me, it was just like, I see it all connected and I really just know there's so much need out there and women are accepting way too many of these symptoms as normal when really they're just common. And so that kind of what started me on this pelvic floor women's health journey. And I've since opened up my own private practice called the Balanced Momtality, where I treat in person and virtually. But then I started my own podcast with the same name because I think this is information everybody needs to know. And so, just having that information out there has been really my goal, just helping spread that knowledge.
How empowering. I'm so excited to talk about pelvic floor even more because being a trainer, I can't tell you how many times if I have women hopping around, they're like, Emily, I'm going to pee myself if I hop too much. And they're like grandma age. They're like, oh, it's just been this way since I've had kids. I've just never. And for me, I'm like, well, I had two C-sections, so I'm lucky. I just don't pee my pants. And you're like you said, it's not normal, but it is common. And I think that's really important to know. So, in simple terms, what is our pelvic floor and why is it so important? Let's get into it.
Yes. Oh, so good. So just to keep it simple, the pelvic floor is a sling of muscles that really encompasses the whole outlet of the pelvis. So it's connecting to the pubic bone, the sit bones, the tailbone. It's really that whole sling. So the obvious function of it is holding everything inside, right? Like it's holding in your organs, your pelvic organs, your intestines. It's the floor of your core. Everything internally is being supported by that. But beyond that, it's also there to help provide pelvic stability because it is supporting that outside of the pelvis. And so it helps support the hips. There's a piece of the pelvic floor that's actually a hip muscle. So hip pain is really associated with pelvic floor dysfunction. It connects into the tailbone, which can set up posture and issues all the way up the chain up to the neck. So looking at stability in that pelvic girdle, support of those pelvic organs, it obviously helps with bowel and bladder function, and sexual function as well. So just really, I think, why is it important? I think that really comes down to it really understanding what the pelvic floor is supposed to do and recognizing what isn't normal is that first step, because I get so many women who've had pain, for example, because leaking is the very obvious thing. People think of leaking, that's like, oh, pelvic floor issues, you pee your pants. But the more, especially intimate, like pain with intercourse, like not many women are bringing that up. A lot of women are accepting that as normal, unfortunately. And I'll get women 10 years down the road who are just like, I've actually been told by my provider that now I'm 40. And so pain with intercourse is expected and normal. And it just breaks my heart because these women have even avoided intimacy with their partners for sometimes like 10, 20 years. They've been living with that pain. And so I think, really recognizing what isn't normal, because even though it's common, it's not normal to pee your pants. It's not more normal to have pain with intercourse, even in a certain position. Because I'll have patients say that, like, well, it's pretty good. There's just, if I'm in the right positions, I'm like, no, no, no. Like, we need to be able to have fun, play around, not be nervous or scared. Like, every position needs to be comfortable. That, menstrual cramps are another big one that are totally accepted. And so having a light menstrual cramp sensation on that first day or two is okay. But if you are doubling down with a heat pack and can't go to work, or you're just feeling like you can't really function and your cramps are lasting a long time, or they're showing up when it's not even your menstrual cycle, that's not normal either. Feeling pelvic pain or heaviness, like your organs are coming out, and pressure, and that's not normal. Sit bone pain, so just being aware that, oh, this is something that isn't normal and I can get help with, I think is really the most important piece around pelvic floor. And just knowing, because like I said, I was 6 years after having a kid and didn't even know. So I just want everybody to know, so that way, at least if they have it, they can decide if they want support or not, or if it shows up down the road, they know that there's something out there and they don't have to take even, because unfortunately we put a lot of trust in our providers. And when they tell us things are normal, that's expected. Or, oh, the labs are normal, like your test came back normal. And that's just the biggest, UTIs. So that's another thing I'm treating a lot lately, is a lot of UTIs, women just getting UTIs thinking that it's normal. Even their tests are coming back negative, or they have pelvic pain and their imaging's coming back negative. Usually it comes back to tightness in the pelvic floor. And so just having that awareness and knowing, oh, if all of these other things came back normal, that doesn't mean my body is normal. It just means I don't have a bacterial infection. I don't have a tumor. I don't have some of these scarier things. So now you can go that route of pelvic PT and really address the actual root cause of that pain and dysfunction. So lots of benefits and importance.
Yeah, I'm seeing this more and more where women are having symptoms. I'm 42 and I'm like, am I in perimenopause? And I'm asking my sister, because she's 4 years older than me. I'm like, what's going on with you? And she's just like, oh, I don't know. It's just like all this, like my period's weird and I get hot sometimes. And I'm asking my mom, like, what was menopause like for you? She's like, I don't know. My doctor was no help. They were just like, well, that's just how it is. And I think this is a good reminder for women to speak up for themselves and seek out specialized help, like someone like you, if they're experiencing any of those symptoms, like you mentioned, like pain with intercourse, leaking. I broke my tailbone 2 years ago, and I was so concerned about my pelvic floor and everything like else being affected by that. Luckily, it wasn't. I guess you don't realize how much you do with your butt, though, when you break your tailbone. I have to tell you that much. But what are some other things a woman's listening maybe today, and maybe there's some symptoms they're not sure, is my pelvic floor, is there something going on? Like, what are some, other than the ones you just mentioned, some telltale signs they should look for?
Yeah, no, great question. So again, obvious ones like leaking at any time. So I think even though leaking is an obvious one, I also many times get women saying, "Oh, I leak, but just the normal amount." And I'm like, "No, no, no. It's never normal, not at any time ever." So even if you're sneezing, coughing, it's not normal. If you're running to the bathroom and you leak a little bit, it's not normal. If you're, okay, I should say if you're like 38 weeks pregnant, you've got a full bladder and your baby kicks you in the belt in the gut, then you leak a little bit. Like we'll let it slide. But even during pregnancy, I'll have women, 20, 30 weeks into pregnancy and saying, "Yeah, I'm leaking a little bit, but I'm pregnant." I'm like, "No, that's still not normal. Like we want to get that to resolve." But then pressure and heaviness or seeing like a bulging in the vaginal canal, that can actually be an indication of pelvic organ prolapse where those organs are actually falling down. And that was another thing I didn't even know about until PT school. I was like, wait, your bladder can actually just fall out of your body. And yes, it can. And we don't want it to do that. So we want to be very preventative about knowing how to manage our pressure. And it's not just about strength, it's really about knowing how the whole system works together. But I would say beyond that, constipation is a big sign. So if you have chronic constipation or issues with bowel movements, if you feel like you're going to the bathroom all the time, you should be able to hold it for about 2 to 4 hours. So if you're going every half an hour, every hour, even hour and a half, and you're not able to hold it for 2, 3, 4 hours, that's another indication something's off. Um, that urgency where, oh, I have to pee, and you don't even really have time to make it there, or you are leaking. So there's urgency, and then there's urge incontinence, which is the actual leaking as you're on the way to the bathroom. Those UTI sensations. So if you are having a lot of UTI feeling, and maybe even you test positive for some, or some tests are coming back negative, that's another sign that there's probably some pelvic floor dysfunction at play. Diastasis recti, or that separation of the abdominal wall during pregnancy, or even not. I've seen this in males as well. That spacing between the abdominal muscles can also be a sign that there's some dysfunction. It's a strict sign there's a dysfunction in the core, but it can really relate to pelvic floor as well. Back pain is another huge one. Low back pain specifically, that low back SI joint space. If you're having pain there, pelvic floor is usually involved. Having any hemorrhoids, disc prolapse, hernias, these are all signs of mismanaged pressure in that core system. So my big goal with all of my patients and anyone I work with is to really just understand that core system, because it isn't just pelvic floor, right? So if we're seeing any dysfunction in that system at all, then we need to look at all of the pieces. And so hip pain is another one. I mentioned there's a hip muscle that comes through the pelvic floor. So any hip issues can be link to pelvic floor. But even beyond that, I've worked with plantar fasciitis with pelvic floor. I've helped heal pelvic floor issues by working on tongue posture and working with neck pain and migraines, working with pelvic floor. So it's all connected. So there's the obvious ones that are within that space, but that's where too, we can't just think, oh, I don't have any pelvic floor problems because I don't have leaking or pain or heaviness. It's like, well, but you've had chronic hip pain and plantar fasciitis for a long time because your pelvic floor can't help stabilize your hip, and therefore your foot isn't aligning and you're not absorbing shock well. So there's just that whole kinetic chain that we have to make sure we're looking at.
Oh my gosh, everything's connected. That could be a whole episode in itself.
Yes.
How everything's connected and one thing affects everything else. So
Exactly.
many different symptoms. And I think it's good to listen to your gut if you're like something just doesn't feel right with the different symptoms that you know that you mentioned, Desiree, but going and seeking out a professional's help. Now, as far as, a woman listening today, we always like to give them some type of action items. What are some simple habits they could do on their own throughout the day to support and promote a healthy and stable pelvic floor? What is something easy we can do to get started?
Yes. So I don't want to overcomplicate it because as we talked about habits, we want to keep it simple. The most simple thing I can say is breathing. So breathing and breath work is probably it is the key. The key to solving all core issues is breathing and knowing how to breathe correctly, how to use your breath with your core correctly. And that goes for, a lot of different reasons, but just in the biggest, simplest ones, that core system is a system with pelvic floor on the bottom, diaphragm is the roof. So we need to be able to manage pressure within those two moving muscles. And that's really where we see a lot of issues. You can have a lot of strengthening or a lot of strength in your pelvic floor and still have a lot of problems because it's not coordinating correctly to manage pressure appropriately. So that diaphragm gives you that physical connection into that management of the core where you can get a little bit more control in that management of pressure. But beyond that, it calms the nervous system. It releases the tension in your upper back. It gives a nice massage into the tight muscles in your core. So it gives a nice massage into the low back muscles if they're tight, pelvic floor if it's tight, and it just helps to relax and straighten, at the same time strengthen eccentrically with that whole core piece. So the breath work is the magic sauce. And the way I habit hack this in is I have what's called a body check. So and this is where it gets a little complicated because there's three pieces to my body check. And so I have this for me, it's personally every time I'm walking through my office, I have like my door frame is my reminder and I just kind of screen as soon as I walk through. But for other women, I have them set a reminder every hour, right? I'm like, set a reminder on your phone and do a body screen. So these body screens are going to first check your tension. So we, many times as women, especially, if you're like, well, I carry all my tension in my neck, or if you're a jaw clencher, actually, if you clench and you have TMJ issues, there's a direct fascial link and your pelvic floor is tightening. So if you are clenching, your pelvic floor is tight. And if your elbows or if your shoulders are elevated, if there's any tension in your system, that pelvic floor muscle, because of its proximity with like the bowel and bladder and the uterus and all of those autonomic spaces, there's such a nervous system connection into the pelvic floor that is very automatic. So if we have stress or tension, our pelvic floor is tightening. So I like, because a lot of women have no awareness of their pelvic floor, especially if you've had a C-section, for example, or a birth in general is a trauma, right? And so the body kind of shuts down. If you have any pain, it shuts down. If you have that C-section scar, it can like physically kind of disconnect some nerve connection there. And so even though you had a C-section, your pelvic floor was also not saved, right? Because you carried that baby for a long time. So I think that's another misunderstanding is, oh, I had a C-section, my pelvic floor is fine. It's like, girlfriend, now you've got a slice of scar tissue through that abdominal wall. Like we've got a lot of work to do. But I think that just having that awareness of tension and using those external signs like the shoulders elevating or your jaw clenching, or even it's your brain running 100 miles a minute and you're just feeling stressed. We're just going to release and you're just screening that body head to toe, relaxing any tension, shaking it out, especially the abs. Women like to suck their belly in. So those ab clenchers can cause a lot of problems. If we think about that core system like a balloon, sucking in is like putting a rubber band around that balloon, and that's just going to shove pressure in places we don't want it to. And so sucking in that gut, we need to let it go, let the belly hang out, clenching our butt. That's another one that like when you're stressed or if you're busy doing something, you might check in and you're just clenching. So the glutes and the abs directly put pressure into the pelvic floor with clenching, but just noticing any clenching anywhere in the body and just relaxing it can be super helpful. So screening your tension in that body check, checking your breath. So we're screening that breath. Usually if we're stressed, we're shallow breathing. We're using a lot of these accessory muscles in our neck. So we can have a lot of more TMJ, but headaches, migraines, neck pain, shoulder pain, nerve pain can all just be coming from how we're breathing. So if we can just reset that breath, get that diaphragm to engage and bring that breath deeper into that core and pelvic floor space, we can just really reset our nervous system and help move that pressure through a lot better. So the last thing I screen is posture, because posture is another thing that if we just slouch, there's a physical change in that core compression and we are pushing a lot of pressure down onto the pelvic floor. So when I'm doing my body check, I'm kind of walking through that door frame, releasing any tension, taking that nice, slow, deep breath and a few of them if I have time, and then just checking my posture and resetting, because it's not so much about checking in and doing everything perfect every time you check in. It's that you're checking in. You're just showing up, you're telling your nervous system to calm back down. And so I'll have women come in so frustrated, right? They're like, every time I check in, I'm just clenching or I'm breathing shallow, and they're so frustrated. And I'm like, no, give yourself a pat on the back. Like, you're checking in. That's the habit. The habit I would build is checking in. Start finding a time, a place in your house, a time in your day, or at least start making those reminders on your phone or your watch so that you're getting that frequent reminder to become a habit where you are just screening your body in general. Because if you're taking the time to show up and work out for yourself, which is hard enough, but throughout the rest of the day, you're clenching, you're tight, you're not breathing correctly, you're kind of working against yourself. And it's almost better to just check in throughout the day, and maybe the exercises happen, maybe they don't, but at least your nervous system's starting to relearn a new normal. Most of us are living in such a state of stress that we can't just take 15 minutes at the end of the day to do our breath work and feel like everything's going to be good. We have to check in with that nervous system more regularly. So I would say that's my favorite habit hack. And just in terms of really getting that pelvic floor health more normalized, is using that body check.
I love that so much. And I love the trigger of walking through the door and just, okay, checking my posture, checking my breath, am I clenching anywhere? And just becoming more aware of like, wow, I am like clenching my jaw like every day. Like every time I do my check, I'm like clenching my teeth. And then you'll be more aware, and maybe you don't do it except every other time, and then it slowly goes away. It's so funny because when we scheduled this interview, I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you about. And I remember the very first time I ever heard about a pelvic floor. It was like when I had my first big corporate job. I was working as a recruiter, and there was a lady in her 50s. I was like early 20s. I just had like my first child. Her name was Claire, and she was like, "Oh, Emily, well, you need to make sure you're working on your pelvic floor to make sure everything just doesn't fall out." And she was like, "You have to do your Kegels all the time." And I was like, okay. So I would sit there at my desk. And I remember that's the only time I've ever been like, someone told me about the pelvic floor. I'm like, I don't know if that's even useful or for for that stage of my life or whatever. But I feel like today has been so informative for our audience, and to give you an idea of just not, I'm just like peeing my pants all the time. It's about that whole mind body connection and how everything is connected in your body, and the energy you're putting throughout your body can be affecting you negatively, and releasing some of that energy. And I love those habit hacks you gave for us today. It's so good.
Yeah. And I think that you are just like most people, where Kegels is really what they think. Like, it's like, oh, pelvic floor, Kegels. Oh, I gotta be, and I'll talk to him and I'm like, how do you need any help with pelvic floor? They're like, I just need to start doing my Kegels again. Or, I'll even have doctors. I've had doctors reach out and be like, so are you just like teaching people how to do Kegels? Like what? And I'm like, actually, that's probably the last thing I do. So Kegels is probably one of the things I don't even really focus on at all, because my big thing is trying to restore that whole core system so that everything is working together as it should, and that we're learning it functionally, how that breath, how that pelvic floor should lift with us functionally through exercise, learning that we need to exhale on effort, and that because that's a core system, it should come with a Kegel. That exhale should come with a gentle Kegel, and there should be some recoil there. And so just restoring that can start to build that strength. But a lot of people already have tightness. Unfortunately, I think most of the exams I've done, I've only had a handful where there was zero tightness. I think more often than not, even with leaking, right? We think leaking, and postpartum with everything's stretched out, it's not working, it's weak. But I find it's the exact opposite. Even postpartum, because it is kind of a trauma, even if it was stretched, the body protects and it recoils back up, because it's like, what the heck did we just do? And so it just tightens up. It's like, no, I need to save myself, and I'm not doing that again. And so that breath, like first thing postpartum, first thing to start working with any pain and even leaking, because if we have a tight muscle, that doesn't mean it's working right. And so if you have a tight muscle and you go do Kegels, you're just going to make it worse. You're just going to cause more trigger points. You're going to cause more pain. And so the first thing really is that breath, and really knowing how it works with the whole system. because Kegels can actually kind of get you in trouble, unfortunately.
I know she was like, girl, every stoplight you do your Kegels. I was like, okay, Claire. Because I was like, scared being a first time mom, I'm like, okay, I don't want like everything to fall out and you know, but I really feel like you have just demystified the pelvic floor for us today. And I hope women listening today feel empowered to go work with you to find out more information. Where can everyone connect with you and find out more?
Yeah, so I do coaching one-on-one. And if you're in New Mexico at all, I do in person as well. But I have a podcast, the Balanced Momtality Podcast. That's also the name of my practice. So my website is also Balanced Momtality. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. So all these places reach out, and I do try and put out some new information on the podcast every week. So it's a great place just to come over and learn more about the pelvic floor. Lots of good stuff, everything from prenatal care to postpartum care, pain with intercourse, UTIs, how to fit in exercise, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, come stop by, say hi, and we will get that pelvic floor restored.
I love it. And I think one thing to end on is no matter where you're at in your season of motherhood, whether you just had a baby, you have teenagers like me, or maybe they're out of the house, it's never too late to work on your pelvic floor health.
It's never too late. That's, I think, another big thing I hear. Women will be like, oh, I had my babies 20 years ago. But my big thing I tell my patients is once postpartum, always postpartum, because your body is never the same.
Mhm.
And so just getting that, especially if you've never gone through the rehab world with your pelvic floor and you haven't gone through that process, or maybe you have, but you're 10 years down the road and now you're starting to have prolapse symptoms or pain with intercourse and things like that. It's never too late, even if you've suffered with pain for a long time. However, the sooner the better, because the body does start to learn that pain pattern, and that ends up usually being the most complicated thing, is reorganizing the nervous system when it comes to pain. So pain is a big one. If you've got pain, get on it immediately. But even if you've got a few pesky P leaks, don't accept it. We need to get on top of it before those P leaks turn to prolapse and turn to pelvic pain. So
That's right. That's right. Well, we'll make sure to link everything in the show notes so everyone can connect with you as well. But Desiree, thank you so much for coming on this show. It was such an
of
empowering
course.
episode.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Desiree, I can't tell you how much I just loved listening back to this conversation as well. Like I said, just geeking out on how just everything is just so connected in our bodies and how we don't have to accept pain or pee in our pants or all these other weird things happening in our body. We can always take it a next step further and seek out specialized help from someone like you. And this is just, again, why women have to think about things differently. We just can't accept that, oh, that's just the way it is. Like, no, let's get to the root cause and help you feel better holistically. So thank you so much for your knowledge and for your passion and your heart. So friends, let's go ahead and talk about my top takeaways from this conversation with Desiree. The first one, we said it over and over again, and I think it's important to note again. Peeing your pants or having pain during sex or feeling discomfort or just all of these weird aches and pains might be common, but it's not normal. I think that is so important to note. You don't have to accept going and being in pain all the time and just think, well, that's just the way it is, or pee in your pants. Well, I just pee my pants. It doesn't have to be the norm. The second thing is finding the root cause of the pain and dysfunction means going to someone with specialized help. Someone that is an expert like Desiree. You can meet with her virtually. You can find people locally. I know there are local places here in Indy that I have heard of that do pelvic floor physical therapy. Sometimes it's just not so obvious other than just like peeing your pants or like people thinking pain during intercourse is like the only symptoms of a weak pelvic floor. Like she mentioned, it could be you have plantar fasciitis and it's connected to having a weak core, or migraines from tension and a weak pelvic floor. Like, I could geek out on this all day, but labs showing that everything's normal or pain is just something that you're just going to have to live with is not the norm. So seek out professional help from someone who specializes in pelvic floor therapy, like someone like Desiree. And then lastly, I loved this habit hack of doing a body check. And I love the door frame trigger, like that. Genius. I love it so much. So the habit loop would be, the cue is I walk through a door. The routine is do a body check. I always say this when I'm teaching a class, we have so much tension in our upper body. So roll your shoulders down away from your ears. Do it with me right now. I'm doing it right now. Roll your shoulders down away from your ears. Are you clenching your jaw? Relax your jaw. Get the tongue off the roof of your mouth. Stop sucking in your core. Like, I feel called out because I do this all the time. Just let your belly relax so it's not like that constricted balloon all the time. Unclench your booty. Unclench your booty. Relax all the way down and just shake it out. Regulate that nervous system and stop feeling all of that tension everywhere that is actually weakening your pelvic floor. I think this is just such a great habit hack and a way to do that body check and to dig a little deeper into the tension, the correlation of the mind and body, right? When you're feeling stressed, you hold that physically in your body. So this habit hack is a game changer for sure. So action steps. First, I want you to go to the show notes, go connect with Desiree online, find someone local, go listen to her podcast if you want to get evaluated for pelvic floor therapy, because like she mentioned, it's common but not normal to pee your pants all the time or have unexplained pain. We got to dig deeper and work with someone who specializes in this in particular. But also, to be living in a state of stress and tension can actually be counterproductive to even your workouts, because now you're feeling tense all the time and stressed, and that's like raising your cortisol levels and blocking what is happening in your body and the changes happening in your body, and not being able to change your body composition or lose weight if that's a goal for you. So start habit hacking those body checks like Desiree mentioned, and take a minute or two each day to do this and release that tension, right? I hope you found today super informative like I did. I can't wait to hear what you think of this episode and how you're going to take action too. Come tag me on Instagram, email me back in my weekly newsletter to be like, oh my gosh, I feel seen. I'm going to start doing these body checks and seeking out pelvic floor therapy. I think this is going to be a game changer for so many of you listeners. So let's go take action and let's go stop peeing our pants, girlfriend. I'll see you in the next episode. Hey girl, real quick before you go, if you are ready to take action in creating your own habit loops, then I want to invite you to take the 3-day Habit Loop Bootcamp email challenge. You'll learn how to create your own cue, routine, and reward from that Atomic Habits for Women philosophy that we've shared here on the show. And it's also available audio only too, so you can take it on the go while you're mom Ubering around town. Just go to bit.ly/habitloopbootcamp. It's linked in the show notes as well to start taking action now. And if you love the show, the biggest way you can support me and other mamas like you is to leave a quick written review so we can help more mamas stop dieting and start training for life via habit hacking. Love and appreciate you.